Affinity Extra, be extra.
Hey guys, this is Roger Moore here on Affinity Extra. We're here to be extra, and this edge is anyway. Before we get to it, guys, you gotta subscribe. You gotta do all that likey stuff, likey. But I'm not really into that stuff anyway. So yeah, I'm just trying to keep it real. Hopefully, you're looking back at this on YouTube or you're listening live on the radio. But it's gonna be a real talk about the whole situation. We've seen a lot of things concerning George Floyd, but we've got our own situation here called Stephen Lawrence. It's Stephen Lawrence Day today, which we're recording this on, and we want to look back in the future. Want to look back at this conversation because I feel that there's not been many talk outside of the drive of his mama and certain things, aspects from there, and all of a sudden I saw on TV yesterday, oh, Stephen Lawrence Day, and I'm thinking, hold on a second, where did this come from? You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's a case of what are we really doing? We want to talk about, and also the challenge, the real challenge is for me, UK gospel, UK rap specifically. You know what I'm saying? What are we doing? What are we really doing? So I've brought on two in the media, we will say experts, and I think we have to be proud. We've got experienced experts in the field of UK rap who can give experiences. When there's a matter of things that we do talk of offline that I think needs to come online, because we hold too much treasures offline, and we need to come online. And when people say, oh, but, the information's there, and this is what we do on the Affinity Extra. We're here to be extra. Now, today I've got my colleagues. I got Wisdom, who's a colleague of mine on the GMIA. Always call him he's the guy who goes on the we told opposites. Well, I'm there going for gospel. He's out there, really looking at the real industry, the real music industry, and really working out there with tile yards, and he's really doing a fantastic job down there, and really giving me, I always call him up, is this the right way to do it? And he goes, yes, it really happens like that. Oh, okay, cool. And then I go back and I just pretend like I know everything. And I got DJ Marks, who's also been a rapper for a while. He might not share himself as a rapper, but he's been rapping, he's done promotions, he's done everything within the gospel field, and he's been there where you could ultimately say all three of us has been there for a very long time in gospel, UK gospel rap, and we want to see it progress. So we're gonna go straight into it. And also, we are black men who are around the age of Steve Lawrence, and we would have seen this as a teenager. Now I'm in Birmingham, and obviously DJ Marks and Wisdom are in London, and I want to get their viewpoints and how they felt and what was going on, because somebody got murdered by white people as a black person, and I don't think people made you realize how did that make black people feel. But I'll get you from my perspective. But I want to just go first with Wisdom, and I'm going to go to DJ Marks. Just give us an insight of, we're coming to Stephen Lawrence Day now. Just give us your heart and perspective of what happened and how you feel. Are we engaging with this day? And then I'm going to go to DJ Marks afterwards.
I think Stephen Lawrence was a absolutely pivotal moment definitely in my youth growing up. The bus that he was waiting to get on is the 122 that runs from Crystal Palace to Woolwich, and I live in Crystal Palace, so it always had an effect on me. And I think that at the time it really threw up lots of questions that in a similar way that George Floyd is allowing people to have conversations that weren't being had before. The Stephen Lawrence case absolutely threw up questions that at the time we hadn't even begun to discuss. And I think that is what's so amazing about the story, and also that sort of laid bare some of the inequalities that were going on in the UK, especially around policing. And other things. It opened up lots of other things. And the thing for me that really stands out is that, we look back at it now as this great triumph, but the actual reality is, wow, if Neville Lawrence hadn't been a handyman who happened to be working for the editor of the Daily Mail at the time, and being able to say to him, this is what's happened to my son, I've got no help from the police. and the Daily Mail putting, these are the 6 people that we believe killed Stephen Lawrence on the front page. If we're wrong, sue us. It was that taking of that platform that really, really changed the discussion. When the people who normally don't really care about these issues are the people driving it, that was what really made the change for me. So it was Stephen Lawrence has been a pivotal moment. It's the McPherson report that came after it, where we get the term institutional racism. It's because of the Stephen Lawrence inquiry that we have the Independent Police Commission, because before the police investigated themselves. So as much as we may have still issues, this was a kind of watershed moment that really changed a lot of procedures definitely within policing and race relations in the UK.
Wow. Okay. You put it, keep it real. And I've watched a documentary. And you're totally right there. If his dad wasn't a good strong lawyer, you know what I mean? I won't say lawyer worker, but you know what I mean? A good, competent, you know what I mean? Well respectful, you know, like our dads. You know, you got our dads where them hard West Indian workers that come over here young and they work hard. If it wasn't that, like you said, where would we be right now? That's kind of interesting when you see the bus that is caught, man. That's crazy, man. You know the bus route is crazy. DJ Marks, what was your perspective at the time when
you know what, it was for me it was very surreal in the sense that you know, coming from the whole like Caribbean heritage, you know, in London I was always told by my granddad to my dad about the experiences that they had coming through in terms of racism. My granddad, my dad, my uncle, they all worked for Ford's cars for like 30 plus years. So there was always stories about racism they experienced and stuff like that, which I grew up being told about and to look out for. And obviously even in going in school, I experienced my own smaller incidents of racism. But this one for me was the very first one that was on such a scale. We're talking about the death of a young man. This was the first one for me that was on such a scale and that seemed to be pushed right in my face, despite the stories I had heard. For me, this was the one that really made everything so real in terms of everything I'd heard over the years, even though I had my own experiences, but it just kind of really hit hard in terms of this stuff is like crazy. I mean, you're talking about going from one thing of experiencing racism, maybe somebody calling you a name or whatever it might be, to now talking about somebody dead. You know what I'm saying? And it's a complete different contrast. And it really hit hard because obviously, being a young black man myself at the time, not that I'm not young now, but, but being a young black man myself at the time, it really kind of hit hard because there was certain areas, for example, you would go through and you'll be told, don't walk around that area because of this particular reason. I mean, at the time, I was living in the Isle of Dogs, and that was a key place in terms of racism. Do you understand? So, you was always told that Isle of Dogs and stuff like that would happen to you. So, literally, for that to happen at that time, now, like, I'm literally walking the street, watching over my shoulder because it's so real now in my face that these things are happening. So yeah, for me, it was just a complete turning point in my understanding of just how deep and ingrained it was in the system, and just how dangerous it was still out there in many respects.
And I would say, thanks for that. And now I'm from Birmingham, obviously. So and the weird thing was, guys, I'll be honest with you, the news didn't travel too well because the only way we would actually get that connection is only, obviously you guys were in London and you got that natural communication between the communities. We were kind of like cut away unless you had people in London. So we was dependent on BBC News, really getting the information. And you know what I'm saying? So for me, it was a really like a slow build up. One of it, as I've seen the story build up and the real information in the documentary. So for us black people outside, we heard a young black guy, and to be honest, we didn't want to go outside in the streets in a lot of areas, and we thought that was acceptable or normal. Yeah, we almost thought like, you know what? There's a certain bus on the way home. There's a certain bus. You don't catch a bus because it goes right into a racist area, which, you know, and you just do not. You catch the bus that goes straight past the area because you don't even. And people may laugh, but you don't even know if you come out on the other side. You know, and people go, nah, Roger, it's only no. That's a real thing for black guys our age, and that happened to us in Birmingham. But the sad thing is that I do believe that the Stephen Lawrence story hasn't been championed enough in the UK, and I feel that I feel that we can do a lot more now. I know, Wisdom, you've worked with the Stephen Lawrence situation in terms of the organization, you know, his mum built up and whatsoever. And you can give me insight because I only can see what I see through the lens of media, and I'm very cute on this because I still think in the UK, when it comes to our community, we haven't assembled properly online to communicate the trueness of what's going on. Now, obviously, his mum has fought and battled over the years, and to be honest, guys, his parents are our age now. Now, what would we do if our son got killed? You know what I mean? And this is the flip side about it. Now, we are his parents' age now. What we do, guys, we will be kicking out some doors. You know what I'm saying? We'll be, and then, but what support did they really have at that time? You know what I'm saying, from the community? Now, Wisdom, what are some of the things that you would have got feedback wise from what support have you seen for the Stephen Lawrence situation?
Well, I think at the time there was very, very little. Now, again, because of them, there's a lot more. Unfortunately, I would say, the youth work charity I used to work for, one of the women who was one of our lead youth workers, her son was murdered in a gang killing. Yeah. And so there was this community of families that was kind of started by, I think Jimmy Mism was another lad who was a white lad who was killed in Lewisham. And there's a number of other families of children who have been murdered by mostly gang violence, actually. Yeah. Who now support each other, and they generally set up some sorts of foundations or things like that, or join together with other foundations. So there were a lot more families sort of having those kind of discussions and support. Now, at the time, I don't think that there was very much for the Lawrences, and they were pretty isolated. And it had a devastating effect on their family. You know, even to the thought that, you know, Stephen actually has a younger brother who's spent his whole life in the shadow of the death of his older sibling. And I think that there were so many things that sort of had an effect on that family. And I really do feel for them. Obviously, Neville and Doreen split up, and it's, you know, it's a horrible reminder every day. And I really do rate Doreen Lawrence for her stoicism. And if you meet her, you definitely know that this is not a woman who wants to be in the public eye. It's not about publicity for her. It is a case of, there was a major problem. Her son was a name of it, and she realizes she's been thrust in a position to continue to take this story forward. And I would agree. I don't always I think it's getting better, but I don't always think there's as much respect shown for the work of what Doreen and Neville Lawrence did to continue the conversation about police brutality, about institutional racism, about, you know, youth injustice. You know, Stephen wasn't in a gang. He wasn't causing trouble on the roads. He was just coming home with his friend. And also, you know, taking into account at the time, the police suggested that the friend had killed him. And, you know, his friend, who then, you know, had to witness his best friend being murdered by a group of youths, you know, went through a harrowing time being, you know, suggested that he'd killed his friend on the road for an argument at a bus stop. So much. I think a lot of my life has been defined, or not defined, but some of my political thinking and my reasons for doing Guns Down and getting involved in schools work has very much been inspired by the life and the death and life of Stephen Lawrence and what his parents did. And that they didn't lay down when everything was against them, and literally everything was against them. They'd gone through every actual point that they could. They had tried everything. The names of the 6 youths involved were written and put onto the windscreen of a police car 2 days after the murder. Right? They did everything they could and were halted on every side. And because of police corruption, it turned out, because the father of some of the boys had friends in the police, and it's that kind of stuff that this case changed.
That's scary, man. And this is, and we're saying justice for George Floyd. Has there ever been justice for Stephen Lawrence?
No, there hasn't. I think there's two things that this makes me think about when I think about the whole Stephen Lawrence thing today. Is as bad as obviously the whole event was, in terms of support and coverage, it was a victim of its time. In terms of the George Floyd thing being at this point in time, I think inevitably was going to receive the kind of media attention, especially with the police involved, that it had received. During that period we're talking about with Stephen Lawrence, there was a lot of issues still, not just in police, but in media and everything else, when it came to actually acknowledging certain things that were happening to black people or amongst the black communities. So as a result of that, it being happening in that time, it wasn't going to get the support that it really needed. Even in terms of the black communities, I mean, speaking to some people over the years, you get conversations with other people which are not black, and it's almost like they take offense that you're trying to have a conversation with them about it. And it was a really weird situation. I think if the Stephen Lawrence thing happened today, especially in this current climate that's happening now with the whole George Floyd thing, I think a lot of stuff will be addressed very differently. A lot of issues which will basically been dragged during the Stephen Lawrence case will probably be dealt with a lot swifter. That's just my thoughts based on if it was happening in this current climate now. But yeah, definitely I agree with what Wisdom said. I don't think there was enough support from what I was seeing visually for them at that particular moment in time. And it is very sad that they both split, and we don't know the reason behind all that kind of stuff. But the fact is, this would have been definitely a pressure on the relationship as well. Do you know what I'm saying? An immense pressure. And you have to applaud Doreen for the work she's doing. I mean, even last year she made a statement that the Met may give up, but I will never give up, because the Met came forward and said that as far as they're concerned, they've exhausted all lines of inquiry regarding the whole Stephen Lawrence thing. And she said, listen, you can give up all you want, I am never giving up. And like Wisdom said, if you listen to her speak, she's not on this thing for publicity, to be seen in front of cameras. She genuinely wants justice for her son, and not just justice for her son, but also to see things change in a lot of the institutions where there's issues here. And it's good to see that, because that fight is not just for Stephen Lawrence, but for all the other black men which are coming up, which may find themselves in a similar situation, or find themselves being targeted because of their color. So definitely you have to applaud her for the work she's doing, and it'll be great to see people supporting and getting behind her even more, because it's going to be difficult regardless of what foundations and etc. have been set up. Yeah, a lot of the pressure will still be on her, and it'll be nice even just to see more of the black community come together and say, what, let's actually drive this thing so that justice is done, so that the police are not just turning a blind eye because they believe that they've done the best they can. The fact is, people are still out there, they know what they've done, and we have to try and get to the bottom of this.
And this is where for me there are white gang groups that are unfortunately our age group and older. You know what I mean? And I said to a white pastor, and I said to him, you see, some of these guys are my age and above in our seeing churches, white churches, yeah, are the same guys that chased me on the streets when I was a teenager and all this business or whatever still, yeah. So for me, I don't think they understand the trauma of being around certain people. I don't think they realize, oh, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? The blood, and I've seen a lot. And this is not about church bashing, guys. Yeah, I'm just looking at how our institutional approaches things, and I think that if you know that somebody's been through a certain amount of trauma, then you handle things differently. You don't just give them. You know, if they've been stung by a bee, you don't just chuck a big massive beehive next to them. They're gonna absolutely die just by looking at the beehive. Now, I think that, you know, there's an expectation that in certain church circles that we're just gonna be cool, and but there's an element of trauma that I had growing up, seeing BMP, KKK plaster graffiti. I don't know what it was like in London, but we had that graffitied over every corner store that was going on there, and you know, your eyes are open. And the one advantage we had is that we were fast. That's all I know. I was the fastest in my area because I was the fastest at school, so I knew exactly which routes I would do. I'll plan my route home. If somebody blocks me off, I would know where to run. And and unfortunately, that's how I grew up in the area. And I grew up in the white area. I never grew up in the black area. And it's very, very scary. But what I want to touch on is that, you know, now you guys as young rappers, 20 plus years now, guys? 20 plus years ago, you know, and obviously we were inspired by, let's be real, the US rap and the social activist element of it, because, you know, you've got the guys that, you know, everyone jokes about now, the one that did a film the other day is NWA. Yeah, groups like that, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? And, you know, and even from a gospel perspective, the rawness of Corey Red and certain guys out there that were putting out what the real life was about. Now, how did you guys approach your rap at that time, and who was it aimed at? Because it weren't aimed to mother so-and-so in church, but who, you know, when you guys were coming through, I'm going to throw that out to DJ Mark first. I'm going to go to Wisdom afterwards. But bro, when you came with your raps, and obviously knowing the injustices were in there, did that inspire you to bring that into your content?
It did eventually. Because of the route that I got into it, I started off a bit different. So at the time of the whole rap thing, I was actually going to the same church as Gifted and Blessed Man. So Gifted really was the one. I literally remember how it all started. He kind of was performing one day at church, and I literally just went up to him and said, "Listen, I love that music." And I was just more talking about how much I enjoyed his music. And next thing I know, he's invited me to his house, and then by the following week, he's now tutoring me in how to rap. So it was a bit of a surreal moment to be involved in that. Then he kind of like took on another three of us. So there was a group of four guys that he kind of got together, and he formed a group. And we was at his house every week, learning the craft, you know, writing lyrics, making beats, all that kind of stuff. So it was really cool. And then obviously, because of how Gifted and Watchmen were really close at the time as well, you know, if you see Gifted, you're seeing Watchmen. So there was a lot that we kind of like took in at the time and was learning. But when I started, it was very much, he wanted us to have that foundation of the Christian background. So it was very much a case of grab a scripture, write your lyrics, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. And then once we kind of like started to learn things, then we really got to that point where we was kind of trying to address young people and certain things that were happening around us. I remember our first event as a group back then was literally at some massive youth event that they did. And we literally was talking about what our experiences were as young people, as well as some of the stuff that was, you know, we were seeing happening around us, including the racism. And we didn't know how well it would go down. You know what I'm saying? And especially at the time, the youth thing that we went to wasn't predominantly black, so that added an extra element to it as well. In fact, some of the I remember walking into the event, and some of the white guys that I saw there turned out to also be going to some of the educational establishments I was going to at the time as well. So it was like, okay, this is gonna get interesting. But you know what? It was actually received very well, especially I think during that time. One of the things that came across to us is that a lot of people, especially the younger generation, didn't even know there was such thing as gospel rap. So you know, coming into that and bringing it was like a highlight of the thing, because like gospel rap, what they'd known was that the choirs and the Helen Baylors and all that kind of stuff. So suddenly here's this group of rappers, and I think, definitely we were able to kind of like talk about, like I said, certain issues and stuff like that that was happening around us, as well as our own experiences. And I think in terms of young people, it really had an impact. I had people coming up to me all the time, people I didn't even know. And they were like, oh, you're Marks, aren't you, from that group? I'm like, okay,
what's the name of the group? What's the name of the group? Because you're saying group. Are we going like this? What's the name of the group? Because I know Wisdom would say Green Jade 50,000 times.
We went by the name of Rap Academy. That was the name of the group that Gifted had started. I think you know that about that one, don't you? I think, yeah.
Okay.
And then obviously it eventually became a bigger thing, which both Gifted and Watchman did, and then like Watchman took over once Gifted went over to the States. But yeah, it was the four of us were like the founding members of that, and literally, like I said, it was an experience for us, because like I said, it was the first time into the whole scene. And then it was great to see just how well, like I said, the young people had received it, because they had never known such a thing had existed within the kingdom, if you want to put it that way. So that was my initial experience.
So imagine, you're saying almost you contact. Obviously, there's a straight development from that, because let's be real, we start off our first lyrics, wherever it's everything. You look at your inspirations, and obviously we're inspired by the word, and we get the Bible out, and we go Now, the key thing that you said, you brought in what you was experiencing and feeling as a young person into the context of the word, and I want to hold to that, because it's okay saying, okay, I'm going to open the word and be inspired by God, but you have to look at the context of how you're walking in, and that's how you make that's how you make your lyricals relatable to your generation out there.
I think that the toughest thing at the time was because obviously when you first start off, your venues that you'll go to are more church based than anything else, and a lot of the churches that we address, we're talking about the churches where like the women are wearing the big round hats and the guys are suited up to the top. So rap in the church was not like one of those things that's just like you can just bowl in and spit to bar and everybody's happy with you. You know what I'm saying? It was very much a case of condemnation and like looking down on and all these kind of stuff. And I remember there was definitely times I'd be sitting down in my house writing lyrics. I'm thinking, God, can I even go to church and put these lyrics? These people are going to beat me out of the church if I say what you've given me to write here. Because I was writing some like deep lyrics, which like I knew people wouldn't take very well. I knew it was things that I felt that needed to be said. And funny enough, I can't think of a time where anybody really, people always going to have their opinions, but I can't think of a time where like someone really kind of tried to shake me down because of what I've said in my lyrics. But it was definitely a complete, there was that initial feeling of fear in terms of how the church would receive, how people would receive me, as well as the other guys. But definitely the whole experience thing was essential for me, because I've never been one to kind of want to just kind of speak certain things to fit into the box or make people feel comfortable. I'd rather just talk real with you. You can accept it, you can. If you can't, you can't. But yeah, that was how it was for me.
That's big. So Wisdom, hey, let's hear about your story. How was your lyrics? Did you get Jesus Wept and turn it into a whole new track? Wisdom Wept.
So I come from a different point of view. Also, I just want to say big up to Gifted. Boom.
Yeah.
We were a group before. So Green Jade was a gang in South London originally. We weren't the worst at all. But we did meet up on Friday nights, listen to Westwood, watch kung fu films, smoke weed. And it was around that time where hip hop had a lot of consciousness in it. So we used to invite different speakers down, and it might be someone from the Nation of Islam, it might be someone from somewhere else. When one of our guys came to Christ, and then he invited his pastor down, and then over about a year period, 14 of the 25 members of the gang came to Christ, and that included people like Jahazo. So our thing was we put it down at first, and then we really felt God kind of calling us back to it. But we'd always had a sense that we hadn't necessarily intended to ever really be evangelical, and then never really thought of ourselves as a gospel group, because we didn't really know what that meant at the time. None of us had really come from church background, so gospel wasn't even on our radar. But we, really felt what actually happened for us was we tried to do the whole gospel thing of, going to Fred Hammond concerts and stuff like that. And this is like 6 months after going to Wu-Tang and Onyx concerts. It just didn't sit well with us. So we started taking our instrumentals that we had and doing mixtapes for ourselves. Because at the time, we didn't know of any other MCs or anything else.
Okay.
So we started making our own tapes called Rhyming Over Dubs. Those tapes started to get out. People started to hear about it. And we felt that, because we used to do freestyles before at like record shops and stuff. So it was something that we were accustomed to. And that was kind of how Green Jade started. And we felt that, we should go back or start again. And when we started again, we started both in the church and in the mainstream, because we'd existed and done shows in the mainstream before already anyway. Okay, yeah. So for us, it was always a case of we just wanted to talk about the experience that we had. And as our music developed, you kind of see that in our music. But we had come from a place where, we all met at Way's house because Way's house was a safe place. Way had been slashed in his face after a fight. And his mum had sorted out for him to move out of Thornton Heath and go and live in Clapham, which was away from what was going on. And he was living on his own at 18, and he started to invite other young men to the house, which is how Green Jade began. So even when I say it was a gang, it was a body of brothers really. And it was a safe space. So when we came to Christ, we brought that mentality of we want to be a body of brothers and a safe space on a positive. And that's kind of how things developed into, actually Guns Down was actually inspired by Birmingham. We were doing a show at Bethel Convention Center the same night that Charlene Ellison and Letitia Shakespeare was shot. And that song was devised driving home in the car, listening to the radio and the reports of these two girls who didn't even make it into a new year because of the violence between Berg Boys and Johnsons and stuff. And that's what inspired the song. And it was probably the biggest thing that we ever did, because it really was our first opportunity to really go back to the people that we came from with something that was meaningful, something that could make a change and a difference by going into schools, having XLP continue sort of education after we did the tour, and really trying to address these issues. That I think that was really what kind of God really called us to do. And even as I look at what Green Jade do now as members, like I still work with young people. Way and Judah are counselors working in prisons. Do you know what I mean? It's always been in our DNA, if you like, to affect the community that we're around in some way.
Yeah, no, and that's fantastic. And I think that, both of you guys, as artists, all three of us, we've contributed to on a ground that was not set for us. We literally had to trailblaze on not a case of an academy for rap, literally, that was birthed out of our elders. We almost had to go against a wave, and it's beautiful actually hearing you both your different approaches towards coming into the gospel rap scene. Now, obviously, you mentioned Guns Down, bro, about it, and Marcus has mentioned to me before about gifted activity in terms of in the community, about our brothers, about our colleagues and whatever. Now, I obviously do a show, live show, and I play a lot of music, and a lot of it's like I play a lot of American music. To be honest with you, yeah, American hip hop, because obviously I'm in that age where we influence a lot by it. And one thing I have seen in this season, we mentioned it before about Mark. He said that there's a difference in today than it was back in our time when things happened. We couldn't assemble so quickly. Now what I'm seeing is I saw a lot of people raising the issue. Flame did a track about the social situation with racism. You got D1 did a track, raw track, and the title of the track was Racist Christians. Yeah. And you've seen a number of US based rappers, yeah, talking, and when you're hearing the lyrics, talking about injustices, talking about the racism, and just keeping it hot and real about how they feel, what they feel about racism in the community. Don't we have racism in the UK? I don't really hear no one talking about racism at all. Right now, whose fault is that? I don't really want to go too much in fault in terms that we know Flame's a big man. He's just a little bit young, shy of us in terms of age. So he did a track about, and it was really emotional track. He's almost like going, hold on a second. Show Baraka, we know Show Baraka has been very, he's been advent for culture, like black culture, and pushing out there in terms of the issues that we have in our community and how we deal with racism and different things. But in the UK, yeah, now Guns Down happened. Jahazo did a track in my neighborhood, and there's a few little localized projects, yeah. But guys, rebuke me and I'll be rebuked. What's happened over the past 5-10 years? What can I play from a UK? Has racism gone in the UK? Is it a case that there's no more Stephen Lawrence situation? We've got nothing to worry about. The police is our best friend and whatsoever. Why doesn't the music reflect the truth and of what is really going on?
You know what? It's like I would. You said 5 to 10 years. I'll go even further than that personally. I mean, while you was talking, I was trying to remember the name of a show because I pretty much remember watching Green Jade. I think it was on Channel. Well, did you guys do a Channel 4 show once? I'm pretty sure I watched that show, and for me, it really brought to life in terms of the fact I looked at these guys. I thought these are young guys. Doing this rap thing, and they were rapping and stuff like that. It really impacted me as a young person, just watching them coming with their positive message and stuff like that on the show.
Yeah,
and as well, taking into consideration that at that particular moment in time, in terms of what they were doing, as well as being Christian brothers as well, it wasn't something that was happening often in terms of that kind of exposure. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, massive. Yeah,
and okay, even without the exposure side of things. Coming into today, I mean, I think there's a lot more exposure available, but it just seems to me that I don't know. I think it has to come down to the artist. I don't think there's any other factors I could put it down to other than the artist, because it's a choice to speak out about certain things. Do you know what I'm saying? Whether it is as a normal speaker, as a musician, rapper, whatever you want to call it, it's a choice for you to say, you know what, I've seen this, or I've identified this, and I'm going to make a discussion about it. But I've said this to you before, Roger. I think that the generation and type of rappers that we saw coming up before, in terms of the Green Jade, in terms of the Warriors, the MC Bowls, the Jahazels, and all that kind of stuff, I don't think we have that kind of nature of rappers coming through right now in terms of the music. That's just my thing personally. You get one or two people dropping a track, but in terms of guys that you talk about, the band of brotherhood and all that kind of stuff, how it was going then, I don't think you have that same kind of vibe now, and it shows also through the content that they release. There are a lot of stuff. I mean, I could go now and pick up hip-hop, grime, drill tracks, 100 tracks, and I can pretty much tell you the kind of theme for most of those 100 tracks, what it's going to be.
Yeah.
If it's not them talking about that they get into a fight with the devil, you know what I'm saying, and what they're going to do, and shanks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's something else, you know what I'm saying? But there's nothing out there that can say, you know what, out of like 10 rappers in the UK, just in terms of gospel rap, that I might get 4 or 5 of them talking about social issues, it's not like that. Maybe one comes out every blue moon. Everything else is more about, as my mum would say, the jumpy music, getting everybody hyped, or the kind of, like I said, almost like every track it seems to, like I said, be about they're in war with the enemy and blah blah and this and the other. And the occasional one, you might get a guy talking about, you know, how hard his life was when he grew up. But in terms of actually addressing the issues, I mean, unless you tell me them, I can't think of any of the UK ones which I've come across which have talked anything about what's happening with the George Floyd thing or Stephen Lawrence issues or anything else like that. I generally can't think of anything. Do you know what I'm saying? And even they don't mention those specific names, but in terms of just a track where they're highlighting the issue. Do you know what I'm saying? I can't actually sit here and think of any which has come across my desk, which, you know, I actually caught and paid attention to and thought, yeah, this one is about doing something. Because I would support that. I would push that. You know what I'm saying? But it's just, for me, it's not been there anyway.
I think that's an issue in music as a whole. As I'm not as connected to the
gospel.
Where has, even from US artists, where's their response to George Floyd? Like, Migos gonna do a track about George Floyd? like what are they gonna say? You know what I mean? And I think, you know, we just before lockdown we had Dave do a performance on the Brits about racism, which was one of the most powerful things. I remember that. I was there. I can tell you, in the room, it was insane. You could hear every word. You could hear a pin drop. He was, and it felt as though my kind of expectation throughout the time of lockdown was I would hear more from him, but I didn't really. And Stormzy put out a track about supporting young people and stuff. But like generally, I don't find that necessarily grime or drill tends to give itself particularly easily as a format towards actually talking anything about social justice. It just doesn't seem to lend itself particularly easily to. Whereas sort of 90s hip hop that I did, that was, like you said, that was kind of part of the culture of it, where it isn't necessarily the sense in I think a lot of rap music today, it doesn't have the same kind of social.
Oh, we lost it here.
I personally make the separation run over a beat.
Sorry, bro.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. You lost it for 2 seconds there. Sorry. You just finish off. Yeah. Go on. Finish off your point.
Well,
there.
no. What we're saying. Yeah. So what I was saying is I don't find that a lot of the music genres now around rap lend themselves very easily to having conversations about deeper things. It's been good to see people like Dave, people like Getz, and Stormzy kind of challenge that. But as a whole, I think that there isn't necessarily much of it. And I think that makes it difficult for us generally, because, well, I make the distinction between rap and hip-hop. I would say rap is rhythm and poetry. It's anyone rhyming over a beat. You can say anything. It can be jump up. It can be whatever. Hip-hop is, the term hip means to know. The word hop means movement. So hip-hop is intelligent movement, right? And I feel like that music died in 2006 as a
okay. Yeah, cool. Like that. I like that. Yeah.
Rap music exists and continues, and every now and again you'll get somebody say something, but it does, the format for it and what it's about is slightly different. And I don't want to become that old man who's like, in my day, but like,
it's true though.
It's a challenge for artists now to work out how do I take this format and say something when actually the whole world is screaming about this. Yeah, I mean, if Coldplay come out with a song about George Floyd and we ain't done one properly, that's not great for us. You know what I mean? Bro. Like, this is a bigger issue now, and I think we do need to. I would encourage artists to find ways that they can address.
I think, as you know, my discouragement when it comes to artists and and we in this conversation now, we know what it takes to release out music. We know how much it took 20 years to release out a track, and we know how it takes to release a track out now, and we know we would rather be in a situation where artists are now where we were 20 years ago when they releasing music. As much as rap was a lot easier than a certain productions 20 years ago, listen guys, it's today what you have around you to be critical, to be listen, people are getting a beat and just chucking on their vocals and putting it on Instagram like it's for free. Back in the day, that was a big production, you know what I'm saying, just to get a mic like this, I would just be talking right now, and just, it's amazing technology we have now. The heart of Christ is something which we function and moving, you know what I'm saying, and how we move out there. Now, the challenge for me is how, and I'm looking at gospel rap right now. We are meant to be open. Eyes are meant to be open, and we're meant to care a lot more. Now, it's okay when I'm seeing people have interviews and everyone's being cute on interviews on TV and on YouTube. But when it comes to their music's in a different compartment to their music, and that's why I rate artists like, I don't know if you guys see the artists D1 and so on like that. They mix with secular rappers and do products with them and challenge their faith and have certain conversations out there. I'm not saying everybody has to be D1, but I always say to people, you know, if God's a great planner and you're all saying that God has told you to do this, yeah, why would he tell everybody to do the same thing? Yeah, he would get people to address different elements, and we have a beautiful spectrum on the mill. But what right about now, we've got rappers, like he says, Marcus says, talking from a ex-gang perspective and saying the same lyrics that they were saying before, but just flipping the two more words to make it sound better. And then at the same time as well, we've got artists that are making music to be hits. They're trying to make a hit so much, but they know they can't say certain things. I cannot do that festival next year if I say racist Christians. I know I'm going to be blacklisted. Yeah. Do we have? But I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys know Jahaz a bit more better than me. I'm sure in his time he would have said, yo, he would have said what he saw. You know what I'm saying? The likes of yourselves, you guys would have brought that into your lyrics in a very cute way. If you tried to, but you'll talk it as it is, what's going on, and it won't make people comfortable about it. So it hurts me, guys, as I would say more of a platform type of guy builder, where I'm looking for appropriate weapons to deal with cultural issues and trying to say to people that Christians are doing things. And maybe this goes back to the church, because the church doesn't engage. Does the churches that all these young people go to encourage engagement in social issues? It really goes back there. It goes back to them, because in the day, so yeah, they just flow out of what they've been taught. And if they're what they're being taught is get to heaven, or God is sweet, and then we know when you get to 25, things don't happen so sweet. You see a couple of them drop off. You were seeing there, been there, done, worn a t-shirt. For me, it's a case of, is it really down to what's being taught or something? I don't know, guys. I don't
think so. I mean, I think that kind of stuff, if you were talking about rappers that are coming out dropping lyrics and they're like 15, 16, 17 years old, a lot of the rappers that are out there now doing the grime, most of them are like probably like 19 going into their 20s. So for me, you have your own mind now to be able to talk, regardless of what you've been taught, blah blah blah. You've got your own mind now, and especially if you're claiming to be around a certain type of crowd or come from a certain type of background, regardless of what you're taught in the churches, if you're on the ground and you're seeing things for what they really are, you know what the deal is. Wisdom was very right where he said, that style of stuff died probably 2006. Do you know what I'm saying? The kind of music that I listened to back in the day. I mean, again, Wisdom will know Jahazel a lot longer than I have. I've known Jahazel for maybe about 20 years. Met him in the engine room. So Wisdom's laughing. You remember the engine room, right?
That made it
literally, Jahazel, from the time I've known him, has always been, regardless of what he might be thinking, he says it as it is. Do you know what I'm saying? Has always said it as it is from day one. And even when I talk about artists in the secular, there were certain issues with Rise. I knew I I only had to wait a certain amount of time before Nas would respond, before Tupac would respond. Do you know what I'm saying? There were certain artists I could guarantee if something happened, they was going to say something.
Going to
you know
say
what I'm saying? Yeah. Where now, regardless of, I don't think it's a case of necessarily what they've been taught in church, because like I said, most of the rappers that we see coming across now are not, like I said, 15, 16, 17. We're talking about, you've gone past your all that age, you're going into that young man thing where you're starting to think your own self now. So you should be able to say, you know what, I'm seeing these certain things and I'm going to address it. So I think it just comes down to one, I would, like I said, it comes down to a courage thing where they're either thinking, you know, like you said, if I drop this kind of thing here, will it stop me from getting certain gigs or stop people from talking about me? Or it's just a case of they just haven't got the general boldness to say, I'm going to address these issues.
Man, they're going bold as well, man. They're going like they're going to shoot down Satan in 2 seconds, man. But when race season comes, the diver goes, oh, no, it's not there,
Because Satan's not the one putting money in their pockets or giving them gigs. They're trying to target those people.
Wow.
And it does come down to audience, and again, when I started doing hip hop and the hip hop I was into and inspired by, right? The biggest deal for most people was if they could afford a Nissan Pathfinder or maybe a Lexus GS300. That was where people was aiming, right? That was big things, right? Do you know what I mean? We weren't talking about Bentleys and Ferraris back then. Do you know what I mean? It was coming from an experience of the street where they didn't really have an expectation that things were going to be huge. Now MCs start with the expectation that I could be a millionaire at some point in time. So I'm trying to get there. I'm not necessarily trying to just simply make the best music that I can that reflects my experience. I'm trying to build a career out of this. So I'm making career-based moves, which I totally understand, especially as an artist who got to a point where my wife turned around and went, name something in the house that Green Jade had paid for, and I couldn't. So, I get, believe me, I get it. But essentially, that then does determine what kind of content you're going to put out. If this is the thing that's going to pay my bills, I do have to consider, if I say this thing, am I going to get on that stage? Because that stage is what's paying my bills. And I think that those are the things that we kind of have to, unfortunately, as I say, because the music has moved in a way that we know more or less what people are buying, and they don't seem to need to be challenged with that. It's kind of hard to be the first person trying to break that mold. So I say, I am hoping that with the Leader, the Daves and the Gets and the stuff, that people will open up and have more conversations, and there will be a little bit more maturity in it. Because I do think it's about the maturity of the music. Because it did take, I heard Chris Rock saying in an interview that, we can't always think that old school hip hop was all about consciousness. There was a few in there, but not everybody was. Do you know what I mean? There was a lot of people smoking weed, checking girls, do you know what I mean? Saying that they were the best in the world and where else. And that happens within music, and I get that. It's just that they were on the same level as NWA. They were on the same level as A Tribe Called Quest or Dallas Soul or Public Enemy or a lot of these other artists that really had something to say about the culture and the time. And that's maybe the issue, is that people don't feel strong enough to be able to stand up and say, actually, this is what's happening with me. I've experienced domestic violence. I've, seen. I'm trying to sort out things in my area and encourage other young kids to do better and not end up in difficult situations with the police. And it is how people go about articulating that with the musical forms that they have in front of them. And I do understand that to be a challenge, but I hope that it's something that we can take up from the gospel community and start to move forward with.
So I'm gonna be very awkward with both of you now. Yeah. Now you guys as rappers now growing up and whatever stuff, and then we're seeing the young people not being technically managed by former rappers. Now in football, we all love our football. Yeah. You see ex-footballers managing football teams. Yeah. You rarely see a Mourinho, and we all see what happens there. Don't worry, this is another Mourinho show. We can expose our Tottenham and whatever. But why don't I see enough of you guys managing artists and giving them the courage and guidance they need to navigate this situation? I'm gonna put this on to you. I kind of gotta figure out, but I think we have to have the real talk, because me as a non-rapper trying to explain to a rapper, yo, this is how you deliver your lyrics, you know what I mean? But I'm expecting experienced heads like yourself who's been on it and talking about in the 90s and the early 2000s and the engine room and all these different things. So and you guys are now in your little, in outer Londons now, in your big yards and mansions and and it's enjoying life, and you're like, oh, that life I've gone past. Why aren't you guys investing and guiding these guys? So that's a rough question, but anyway, go.
I'm absolutely cool to answer that question. I have actually been in situations where that has been exactly my goal. One thing that I think a lot of it will come down to, even whether you decide to do that or not, is also about teachable spirits. I don't believe that a lot of these guys have teachable spirits. I think it's more a case of they believe that they can do it themselves. They don't need advice from anybody else. That kind of thing. I don't think it's a case of people wouldn't be willing to like sit down with some young guys and have a word with them and usher them. Do these young guys want to sit down and be told about how things are really running? And from my experience, the answer is no. Whether they're ones which are coming up, or some of the guys which might consider to be the big guns in gospel hip hop and stuff like that, you cannot sit down with them and tell them anything, and they'll be like, yeah. They actually do believe that they know everything that they need to know. I mean, we can sit here and mention even like names like, the Gifters, the MC Bowls and stuff here, right? If you try and mention some of these names, some of these guys here, right? That's fluff talk to them. They don't know what that is. They don't know that who these guys are. So it's like, it's not. I don't think it's a case of, because again, from what I know of the guys of that generation, I'm saying, I'm still in groups with people like the Warriors and the Gifted and these other guys. I still speak to people, man like Jahaziel. Do you know what I'm saying? And from what I know of these guys' spirits and stuff like that, if they was given an opportunity to say, sit down with a group of guys and just have a word with them for me, I don't think any of them would say no. Personally, I don't think any of them would say no. I really do believe it comes down to which of the young guys out there doing their music in that genre right now would be willing to come down and actually be told, actually, you need to fix up, you need to do this, you need to do that. I don't see any of them having that kind of spirit about them where they're willing to do that.
Ooh.
Yeah, I would definitely concur with that. I mean, I'm coming from the point, like, I work with Lucas Langdon, so a lot of
Big up Lucas, man.
People like Governor used to work for him, Faith Child worked for him.
Yeah, man, Tunde. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? A lot of these guys came through
JS.
that school of awake in some way. And like so I had contact with a lot of them at their beginnings, and when Green Jay was coming to an end, we created this thing called Ground Level, where we put on seminars to try and help
I remember that.
other young people who are coming up in the game to understand a bit about it. And we've always tried to be around, but I found that there's a whole generation who, like you said, they don't know who Green Jay are, even though we tried to go out there, and I mean, even specifically for me, it's always been, if I see someone sort of appear in the non-Christian world, the mainstream, I will always try and reach out. So like when everything was happening with what they called Hope Dealers, I reached out to Hope Dealers. I sat down with them, tried to have a conversation with them and try and be like, look, this is my experience. This is what we did. I'd love to support you. You guys need to make some decisions about this and everything. And to some extent was met with a little bit of hostility, because it was like, and you ain't really made nothing, and you're not really a big name, so why should that?
Yes, I remember that.
In their context, do you know what I mean? They wouldn't know about what we've done, and I think that this is an issue with music in general. I, as a hip hopper, because of my love of it, got to know about P-Funk and Parliament and George Clinton and Bill Withers because I love the samples that were being used, and I chose to go and find out more about them. But I don't find that every lover of a musical form does that. They don't always look back at the history, and unless the history has been pushed in your face, a lot of people don't actually know where things came from, or how is it that I'm allowed to rap in church? Oh, there was a group of people who started rapping in church, got cussed by people, proved that it was good enough, and then they allowed us to rap in church, and that's how I'm doing it, and it's no problem. You don't know who those people are, but you know what I mean? Like,
wow.
That knowledge, generally one of the things for the black community as a whole that we lost the ability to do is we don't really talk about our story and how we got here. We don't. We're not good at that. As a result, actually, we're doing a Green Jay documentary because we know that we need to kind of tell this story about
man. That's good.
And how we got there, because we can't expect people to know. And for people to come to us, but like I've been trying to reach out to people like Mark Nobilis for a while, just to be, and what I used to do as well was because every year there seemed to be rap guys nominated for MOBO. Whenever the MOBO nominations would come out, I would text all of the rappers and like encourage them and say, look, like this is the only point in the year where you get to put your head above the pulpit. Please say something, do something, wear a t-shirt with your website on it, utilize it, because this is the only night in the year that anyone looks at gospel outside of gospel. So please don't just say thank you to my pastor, Jesus is great, and bop off. Like when you do something with the platform, and try to encourage our community to do better. But then I suppose over time I got further and further away from it and didn't really get any back. But I'm here. I created Tileyard Impact to specifically be a platform for all young people that could accommodate us as well. Do you know what I mean? I'm, next week holding, we do a monthly seminar called Access All Areas, and on the 1st of May, we'll be doing one on the intersectionality of gospel and how it interacts with the mainstream. And, bringing Melvillous on there, bringing House Gospel Choir on there, because I want to get this information out and empower people. But like you said, sometimes people are like, I want to do it all on my own. You can, bro, but you don't have to.
And the scary thing is, Wisdom, put yourself in their shoes now. If you knew that you had somebody who was in the, that loved Christ, but had some element of authority and had a space within the, and I have, dare I say, secular environments, I'm sure Green Jay would be knocking down that door and going, what do we need to do next, and come back. And I remember, I'll never forget this, Bernard Achipong, he's a BBC one lecturer, and I did a track with a young artist years ago, you know what I mean, and I, we'll get talking because, before I had I was working with this artist, we always would touch base. I just sent him a track. I said, bro, give me your opinion about this track. And he said, Roger, we need to do this, do this. And there's people, if you know that there's people that we know that's on the other side, you contact them, whatever. But it's amazing how we, with a generation that does not want to reach out, and is quite vital. And I'm open for that conversation. And I think Wisdom and both DJ Marks is here now, going, yo guys, like we hear, and it's scary what you're saying, DJ Marks, is that we could have a conference in 2 weeks. And all the old guys will come out, and they would love to come out and talk and to share, but we'll probably only have 4 or 5 young people come of the new rappers come in that area. And it's important, as Wisdom says now. Myself, I'm in a drive to document gospel history, and I think it's important not only from era of singing music, but also dare I say, urban gospel music and history, and we always refer to it. Sometimes, Wisdom will call it the golden era in the late O's, and probably ended in the early 10s. In that period there, where there's a mixture of singing and rapping on stage, I was able to bring over a rapper, do a rap concert, and I'll never forget this. Everybody was gassed around me when we did GR Live, and it was sold out. And I remember Pastor Ephraim was like, man, Roger, well done, man. the tickets all been sold out for The Truth. Yeah, man, your team, man. I said, bro, you think this is all about today? Bro, I'm a big man, you know what I'm saying? It's what happened 7-8 years ago that's enabled us to get away with having a concert with pure rappers, because before you had to open up with worship leaders, you know what I'm saying? So there's no way you can get from zero to hero in 2 seconds. But I saw a couple of the guys that are around me kind of getting gassed against, yo, it's the way it looks, the way we promoted it, the way we did this, which is great. We did a great job with it. But the reality of the show is, if the front line, the cannon fodder didn't die just to make this thing palatable, we wouldn't be where we are right now. But The Truth, who is the younger out of the cross movements, he came over earlier, but he's the younger one, had after cross movements coming over and doing that hard work, I think literally sleeping on the floor at Pastor Ephraim's house, and doing interactions in that way. I heard he didn't really get on well with Wisdom, but anyway, that's a whole other story in itself. But a lot of people that's made the hard work, we wouldn't be here where we are. And I think that if we miss that, I don't think we'll move forward too far with UK rap. And I think we need to get back to that, and we need to be way more 100% strategic.
This goes back to what I was saying regarding people having a teachable spirit. And it's not just, when I say teachable spirit, it's not just about people like myself, Wisdom, and I was like teaching about them, also being willing to and go and find out the information themselves. Do you know what I'm saying? Because the information's out there, and something like what Wisdom's saying in terms of the documentary, I would champion that if it came across my table in terms of pushing it out there, because it's something that needs to definitely go out there. Because a lot of the guys now are comfortable to kind of like sleep in the silk blankets which have kind of now been laid before, but they're not talking about how hard it was sometimes to even get a set in some churches because it was hip hop. Do you know what I'm saying? Or how some people responded to the fact that you could go to a church, perform there, right, and nobody clapped for you because they all think that what you just did there is devil's music.
Wow.
do you know what I'm saying? It's a completely different thing now. But like I said, that those people came through, they laid the foundations and broke down so many barriers to enable them to get to where they are now. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, even in terms of when you take it outside of the kingdom, there were people like, for example, Tim Westwood, he loved gospel hip hop when he started getting into it. I remember events that was done down in Dingles, and I think they showed that one. I think it was either Channel 4 or BBC 2 as well. And Gifted was down there with Warrior and Watchmen, and like some of the guys were down there. And Westwood was down there, and he was like, yeah, I really loved it. He really loved it. And he started playing a lot of the tracks from these guys on his show, you know what I'm saying? So there's a whole story behind the stuff which had laid the way for these people now, because during that period where Westwood started playing some of these guys' tracks on his show, not a lot of radio stations were playing the gospel hip hop either. And I'm not talking about the Christian stations, I'm talking about the secular stations. So there was people both in the kingdom and outside that helped to lay the foundations for what now these young guys can come into. And feel free to do what they're doing.
Wow, that's crazy, and I think, and the scary thing is, young people, you actually think you kind of trailblaze and you open the doors, but the doors are flying open for you. The doors are already unlocked, they're already been bashed down, and you just walk straight through it. In fact, we can proudly see a lot of young artists get onto BBC One Extra, but the problem that we do have is that basically that they get on there and then what's the plan next? What's next? And then it's because there was the strategy wasn't put together properly. It's almost
I think also the community vibe amongst them, I think everybody is kind of very scattered now. The generation where a lot of the older guys came from, if you see one of them was going to perform somewhere, a lot of the time the whole crew goes down there to support. Do you know what I'm saying? So you wouldn't just go somewhere and only see a Green Jade on stage. You might see Warrior and everybody else in the audience bigging it up. Do you know what I'm saying? And so there was that community vibe where everybody was kind of like supporting each other and behind each other. I think the last event I went to, I say last event I went to, it's been so long, it's probably just the last one I remember, to tell the truth. Ibe Giant Killer put on an event in Myland New Tea, a hip hop event down in there. And there was a whole load of the guys down there as well. And going to those kind of things really brought it home that, you know what, this isn't just about the hip hop of it. Yeah, there was an actual family feel amongst everybody in that period in terms of supporting and stuff like that. Even to the point of heads meeting up to pray with each other and encourage each other in Bible studies and stuff. There was a lot more going behind the scenes than just the music. And yeah, you're definitely not seeing that kind of stuff now. I think the closest we got to it, in terms of the guys of the now generation, was probably when Simply Andy had that group with Governor B and Triple O and all them guys
got to
going at a time. That was the last group I've seen, I think, of that kind of generation that I saw coming through and trying to do a thing where there was that community vibe. But yeah, I definitely don't see it now.
And, you know, I also want to round off, and, you know, that's a valid point. I think the only groups that we tend to have these days are WhatsApp groups. I think that that's really great. But like he says, it's that detail which is a bit more important. But I want to end on this. And guys, I really do appreciate the conversation. And people thinking, okay, how you've got from rap to how Stephen Lawrence to rap, and I think that, you know, we come from a generational voice, and I feel like, you know, it's important for us to really have sit down and I would shout to every artist out there, you know, and I would say definitely feel no way. I'm sure Wisdom and DJ Marks wouldn't mind a direct message from you on Instagram or whatsoever to shout them out, because we're here to give what we can. You know what I mean? All three of us. And I mean, specifically when it comes to rap, I think we're missing the trick. We've had 12 months of silence in the UK. Sorry, talking about a few mental issues is great, but right about now, there's some large issues going on within our community when it comes to racism. And we as Christians need to be on the edge of this. And I would encourage us to be on the edge of this, not for publicity's sake, but as a witness to our community. And a community sees a church which is not engaged in social issues. And one of the major things about that is how we deal with it in a musical sense. And the musical sense is quite muted for me, because I'm going through the stuff, I'm going through all the releases, and it's all surface off, which is all great, but it's a surface off, man. You know what I mean? But I'll just encourage everyone out there. And guys, do hit us up at Affinity Xtra. And thanks again, guys, for your time. I know we could carry on talking for another 2-3 hours and have a massive conference, but we'll get to the stage that we will have these things when COVID locks down, and we have conversations with the Jahazals, with the certain guys, and they will come out, and we want to engage with these guys, with all you guys on there, because we need to move forward now in the industry, so people financially and also spiritually and also socially filled from what we're doing, man. Anyway, so guys, thanks again for coming on today's show. And as we salute, this is Stephen Lawrence Day when we're doing this recording, and we want to really hone back and realize that there's injustices going on in the UK to this day. We talk about George Floyd and his killers have been found. Just imagine just not having that sorted, and that's a Stephen Lawrence situation. You know what I'm saying? I'll be mad to this day. You know what I'm saying? I'm still mad about George Floyd, let alone the situation with Stephen Lawrence. That's in the UK, not in the US. You know what I mean? That's Roger. Over now on Affinity Xtra alongside DJ Marks and Wisdom. Bless you guys.
Visit us for updates and shows at affinityextra.co.uk.